Hello students, welcome to week 6 for COM 525, Media Effects on Communication Behavior. This week we will be looking at social constructionism and cultivation theories, really particularly in how that relates to media effects and further explains media effects perspectives. Looking at the content, it's important to know that we are in week 6. The week 6 agenda tells us that we're reading chapters 3 and 4. Both of those deal with cultivation theory and looking at media effects from that perspective. And in addition, we are watching 4 videos, 1 on cultivation theory and 3 of them on social constructionism, particularly a very important profile interview with Dr. Berger, who was phenomenal in shaping the ideas of Berger and Luckman's social constructionism theory. And the reason for that, the heavy focus on social constructionism, is because we have a social constructionism paper due this week. So the text that you were reading in the attached PDF in Blackboard, or if you had the physical text of this one, you need to be finished reading this week and writing your book review on that. That's really what your paper entails, and we'll get into that in a second. In addition to that, for your critical assignment, you have a source list due, as well as a critical review that is due on Thursday, and the replies that are due on Sunday, excuse me. So our social construction of reality book review asks you to really read the book if you have not already, which would be a crash course because we were supposed to be reading it throughout the last 5 weeks, and develop an APA paper of no less than 5 pages that answers each of the 5 questions you see here on the screen. This is also in Blackboard, but it's important to keep in mind that when you do this, you need to make sure you're introducing the theory, telling us all about it, determining if this theory is influential within the realm of media effects, and find at least 3 scholarly sources that support your contentions in that particular question and overall within the paper. Determine if the influence of a Christian worldview perspective exists within this theory and the utilization of that within media influence and effects, as well as providing 3 examples of how social constructionism is used within society and media. And that can be actual mediated examples that you've found throughout media sources and news reports, or it can be hypothetical scenarios. 5 asks you to make sure you have at least 3 outside sources to support all of your assertions. What I'm getting at is I want to know what you think about this theory in the realm of media effects, how it pertains to a Christian worldview perspective, and some examples of where we might see this interlie within society. So that's the paper there. That's due on Sunday. Your critical assignment source list asks you to provide me with a list of sources that you feel are good for your critical assignment so I can verify you're on the right track. You'll create a list of 5 to 10 sources that will be used in your critical assignment. Include the APA citation as well as a 1 to 2 sentence description of the text and why you feel it's important for your proposal. So this is a very abbreviated form of an annotated bibliography if you're familiar with that. I'm only asking you list 5 to 10 sources and give me about a sentence blurb as to why you plan on using them within your media effects critical assignment paper. And that's due on Sunday as well. The third thing we have this week, so this is kind of a heavy week content-wise, is we have another critical review. This one, you'll be creating a visual presentation, so you will not be required to write anything. What you need to do is create some sort of video or audio presentation, either through YouTube, Screencast, or VoiceThread. And make sure if you are using Screencast, it's uploaded either directly to the Screencast site or it's uploaded as a YouTube. I do not accept MP4 files. The size of the file and the download time and upload time is just too time consuming. So make sure you do upload the screencast to either YouTube or to the Screencast site. If you use the Screencast system, it'll automatically default to let you just click on one of those. So either YouTube, VoiceThread, or Screencast that has all the elements of a critical theory that we typically do. You're going to review major concepts and elements from the theory, analyze the strengths and weaknesses, and tell me your personal thoughts on that. This is all going to be visual. So if you do a VoiceThread, you will have to obviously have a PowerPoint, upload it to the VoiceThread site, and then provide some type of audio or video description of each slide of you presenting it. Or you can just simply create a a YouTube video of you just sitting there and we can see you talking about it in the 3 points or so. Each video should be around maybe 5 minutes or so, give or take a little on each side. When you do that, you do need to post that no later than Thursday to the discussion board forum and reply to at least 3 other students by Sunday with 300-word responses. So this is designed to give us a little break from the actual writing, since we're very heavy on writing this week with our social constructionism paper, and you can simply create a presentation and present it to us about the particular theory you're evaluating this week. As we move into some of the theories, I'm going to briefly highlight cultivation theory. Cultivation theory relies from the for scholars of Gerbner and Gross. It was developed in the 70s and relies on heavy media consumption. What it really tells us is that the more media you consume, the more heavy of a media consumer you are, the more susceptible you are to media messages and the belief that these media messages are always real and valid. So you know, you're an avid Oprah watcher, and we know this. There's been a lot of studies that have shown this over time. The more and more women or people watch Oprah, the more and more they believe what she has to say at face value. That's cultivation theory. Why? Because you develop this interpersonal connection with the person on the screen, and you develop trust and things of that nature, and you're cultivating those attitudes through mediated messages. So media cultivates the status quo. It does not challenge it in any way. It wants you to believe what the status quo is and things of that nature. And particularly, mean world syndrome was a direct result of cultivation theory. That's very important to keep in mind from a scholarly perspective. If you're not familiar with mean world syndrome, it's simply just that the more violence that you watch through any mediated device, book, film, television, news report, whatever it may be, tends to mean the more you will believe that the world is dangerous. So we gauge the dangerousness, for lack of a better term, of the world from the media exposure we have to violence. Television heavily influences our perception of the world in this sense. Scholars are now evaluating cultivation theory in the use of more new media technologies. The scholarship tends to lag a couple years behind mediated trends and such, so we're currently looking at some of those things. But media consumption, one of the main tenets of this theory, really cultivates attitudes. Particularly within its viewership. So we tend to have certain attitudes towards things in general in life, and media tends to confirm and cultivate those attitudes. Consumers typically flock to watching like-minded media outlets or consuming like-minded media to further cultivate their attitudes on particular topics, as opposed to watching an outlet or consuming news or whatever it may be from something that is in contrast to what they believe. So most people will utilize media as a cultivation effort to confirm attitudes, cultivate their attitudes, their thoughts, and things of that nature. It really focuses on this idea of cultivation of attitudes towards certain topics that are based on attitudes already present within society, and media is confirming that. We're more likely to believe that based on how heavily we consume particular media outlets, and that's cultivation theory. It's very, very, very fascinating. Social constructionism, I wanted to spend a little time on this just to clarify some things, was developed by Berger and Luckman. Really what this theory assumes or purports is that understanding, significance, and meaning are created within the individual, but also within coordination with other human beings. So we rely on social interaction to construct our reality. And as you read through this book, you saw some of those ideas that Berger and Luckman used to defend that. Really what happens is that, in a nutshell, is that we observe and we learn through observation. That is confirmed through Bandura's social learning theory and such that we've already discussed this term. So if we learn through observation, that means we're constructing knowledge based off of what we see. What we assume to be reality is constructed to us by observation socially. So what I see and how I see others interact, I'm socially constructing my reality. Really, it tells us human beings rationalize their experiences by creating models of the social world and how it works. That's exactly what I described. We create scenarios so we can classify how to react in certain situations, and know that Berger and Luckman have told us that if I think this way about a topic, it's because I've observed the reality and created my reality based off of what I've observed. And when I say by creation, it's really a real constructivist approach. So we're constructing knowledge. We're building on building blocks at any given time. Language is essentially the big marker here in establishing that reality by communicating with one another and what we're told and things of that nature. We tend to believe what is real and is shaped by our social interactions and experiences with others in our life. A good example of this, if you've ever read Plato's Allegory of the Cave, if not, I encourage you to YouTube it and watch it this week and think of this theory. So in the Allegory of the Cave by Plato, what happens is that it starts off by saying that there were 3 prisoners that have been chained the majority of their life, faced to look at a rock and not be interactive with society at all. All they see and all they know about a society is from what they've talked about with one another and what the shadows that they see being projected from a fire that's burning behind them and a bridge of people walking by back and forth to wherever they're going. So they tend to sit there and think about life and try to say what they think life may be based off of what they hear people saying walking behind them and the shadows that are being projected on the wall in front of them. And so one day they say, if you're talking and you think, I think that this is a tree based off of what you see being projected by the human shadow, you'll begin to think that that is a tree. And so in the Allegory of the Cave, Plato talks about this. He says, if all you've ever known are these shadows and all you've ever seen are these shadows and somebody tells you, hey, that's a tree, you're going to think, oh, okay, that must be a tree. You told me that. I don't know what a tree is. And so now I need to think that this is a tree. And one day you're freed. The chains are broken and you're allowed to go out to society. And it takes a second for you to adjust to the light, because you're constructing new knowledge, and see the sun because you've never been exposed to it. And you're walking around and you see something and you point to a person, you say, hey, what's that? And they tell you that's a tree. You'll look at them and say, no, that's not a tree. A tree is what that person showed me in the cave. And then the person will convince you and say, no, a tree has a brown trunk and green leaves and it spouts out over us and provides shade and this and that and all these resources. And once you gain that knowledge and you've socially constructed a new reality of what a tree is, it is very profound. And so in the Allegory of the Cave, Plato says, you'll run back to the other prisoners and say, hey, guess what? I know what a tree is. It's this real thing, blah, blah, blah. And you'll explain it. And what will end up happening is that the prisoners will, 1, not even be able to understand you, 2, have no way, and they'll laugh you out of the cave. Why? Because their reality is constructed based off of what they know. And now that you have this newfound reality that's been socially constructed, you have a new experience that you're constructing to model what a tree is. You no longer subscribe to what they believe. And that's really Berger and Luckman. It's socially constructed, and you can only believe what's been socially constructed for you. And that's really, really, really important. And that's what some of the texts and things talk about this week. As we move forward, keep in mind that we are working on the week 6 agenda. We have chapters 3 and 4 that deal heavily with cultivation theory and should enhance our thoughts about that. We're watching some videos on social constructionism and cultivation, as well as completing the social constructionism paper, our critical assignment source list, as well as critical review number 3 on Thursday. If you have any questions, let me know, and I pray that you all have a blessed week. God bless.